Every morning, the sky begins again. It does not ask whether you are ready. It simply opens. Light returns not with urgency, but with quiet certainty. And so do you. Not the version of you the world sees, not the one with tasks and titles and timelines, but the one who breathes before thought, who listens before language, who is alive before agenda. This is where your day truly begins. Not when the alarm sounds, not when your feet hit the floor, not even when the sun rises, but when your awareness returns. That is the real reset, not in changing your surroundings, but in resetting the way you see them. Because nothing outside you is changed, but if you return to presence, everything inside you softens. That is the work. Not to control the world, but to stop letting it pull you. To come back to the breath. To come back to the stillness that has never left you, but which you forgot to return to. This forgetting is natural. It is not a failure. Like clouds drifting over the sun, the mind covers the light, but the light is never gone. So each morning is a clearing, a gentle parting of those clouds. Not by force, but by breath, by rhythm, by attention. You do not need to strive for peace. You only need to stop disturbing it. So pause. Before movement, before words, before expectation. Be still even for just a moment and listen. Not with your ears, with your presence. Feel the weight of your body in the bed. Feel the way the lungs expand even when you do not command them. Feel how the air moves, not because you make it, but because you allow it. This is what life is. This is what you belong to. Not the schedule, not the deadlines, not the story, but this breath, this awareness, this beingness. You cannot reset your mind by thinking more. You reset your mind by noticing more. So what do you notice now? The coolness of the air, the space between your thoughts, the way your hands rest without needing to do anything. That noticing is a form of healing. It is how you come back, not to a new life, but to the one you were always in, yet rarely truly present for. There is no ceremony required, no ritual to impress, no posture to perform. Just presence, just breath, just the quiet courage to be where you are fully. This is the foundation of all change. Because the mind cannot be reset through willpower alone. It must be softened through rhythm, through return, through reverence. And reverence is not about sacred places. It's about sacred perception. Can you treat this moment, this very ordinary morning, as if it were holy? Not because it is rare, but because it is real. And what is real is always sacred. The monk does not need new landscapes to find peace. He brings peace into whatever space he stands. So, bring it here, into your room, into your body, into the ordinary stillness of morning. Let this stillness become your first teacher. Because before the mind learns, the body already knows. It knows when you are rushing. It knows when you are present. It knows when you are living as a guest in your own breath. So return to your home. Not the building you live in, but the breath that lives in you. Let it guide you. Inhale slowly. Exhale completely. Do not try to calm the mind. Let the breath calm the body, and the mind will follow. Like a stone settling to the bottom of a quiet lake. No effort, no push, just gravity and time and trust. This is the way of nature, and you are not separate from it. You are not a machine to be optimized. You are a being to be attuned. Attuned to silence. Attuned to rhythm. Attuned to the truth that peace is not found by climbing higher, but by going deeper. So go inward. Notice the tension, do not fight it. Notice the resistance, do not judge it. Let it rise, let it soften, let it pass like weather. Because all things pass, even confusion, even noise, even fear. What remains is not your control. What remains is your awareness. That is what you are resetting each morning. Not just your thoughts, but your relationship to them. To remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the space they move through. You are not the storm, you are the sky. Let that truth land. Let it settle into your spine like an anchor, so that even as the day unfolds with its meetings and movement and uncertainty, you are not tossed by it. Because you did not begin the day in chaos, you began it in clarity. You stood still long enough to feel the pulse of being, and now you carry it forward, not as armor but as alignment, because you are not here to win the day. You are here to walk through it awake, to speak with intention, to move with grace, to pause with purpose, and when you forget which you will, you begin again. That is the gift of breath. That is the wisdom of mornings. They do not demand that you get it right. They only invite you to return, and return, and return. Each breath a soft invitation, each pause a doorway back to stillness. Each act of noticing, no matter how small, a seed of peace. Plant those seeds in your tea, in your silence, in the way you put on your clothes, in the way you enter your work, in the way you sit, in the way you speak. Let your day be filled not with rush, but with quiet repetition of what matters. Not because it's impressive, but because it's real. And reality fully seen resets the mind better than any motivation. Let this be enough. Let this be sacred. Let this be the way you meet yourself. Again, there is a rhythm beneath all things, not the rhythm of productivity, but of presence, not the tempo of urgency, but the quiet cadence of nature. You can hear it in the breath. You can feel it in the bones. You can sense it in the space between one moment and the next. This rhythm cannot be forced. It cannot be taught by intensity. It must be returned to. Like a drumbeat you had forgotten, like a language you once spoke before words were necessary. This is what it means to reset the mind, not to install something new, but to clear away the noise that was never yours. You were not born to be distracted. You were not born to be pulled in 20 directions. You were not born for overwhelmed comparison or endless proving. You were born to notice, to listen, to move with care, to touch the world gently and leave it better for having passed through. But that begins not with action, it begins with awareness. And awareness begins in the simplest places, the way you stand, the way you stretch, the way you breathe when no one is watching. Because how you do the smallest things reflects how you meet everything. This is not poetry, this is practice. In Shaolin, the most advanced movements begin with stillness. The master returns again and again to the basics, to the foundation, to the breath. Because true mastery is not complexity, it is depth. And you cannot go deep if you are always chasing the next moment. So come back to the gesture, to the step, to the silence between words. Even now, notice, are you rushing through this moment even in your mind? Or are you here fully, quietly, completely? That is the training. And it does not need a teacher in front of you, because your teacher is already here in the form of your own experience. If you are tired, it teaches you to rest. If you are tense, it teaches you to soften. If you are distracted, it teaches you to return. And each return is strength, not the loud kind, not the kind the world applauds, but the inner kind, the kind no one sees, the kind that carries you through when motivation fails, the kind that feels like knowing who you are not because someone told you, but because you remembered. Discipline is not about control. It is not about forcing the mind into silence. It is about creating space again and again until silence arrives on its own, and then choosing to stay with it. Not forever, just long enough to hear what the world drowns out, because there is a voice beneath the noise, and it doesn't speak in words. It speaks in knowing. You've felt it before in the woods, in the rain, in the rare moments when everything inside you stops running. It says nothing dramatic. It just says you are here, and this is enough. Let that voice rise now. Let it echo through your chest. Let it remind your nervous system that it does not need to fight, that not all moments are emergencies. That peace is safe to feel, because your body will not reset if your breath is shallow. Your breath will not deepen if your thoughts are sprinting. So bring your awareness back to the inhale and back to the exhale. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to be good at this. You only need to notice. Notice where you resist. Notice where you soften. Notice how awareness itself begins to shift everything. This is how you change your life, not by rearranging the outer world, but by meeting it from a new depth. And that depth is built in quiet repetition, not in grand decisions, not in sudden awakenings, but in the humble rhythm of choosing stillness each morning. And when you miss it, as you will come back the next morning and the next. Because it is not about perfection, it is about devotion. Do you understand? There is no final state to reach, no badge of enlightenment, just a steady bow to the breath, just a sacred nod to the present. That's all. And that is enough, because the most powerful change is invisible, like the mountain slowly becoming smoother by the wind, like the stone reshaped by water over time. It happens beneath the surface, without fanfare, without audience, without reward. But it lasts. So let your morning practice be quiet. Let it be uneventful. Let it be small. That is the doorway to stillness. Not loud change, but consistent remembering. And you will forget. You will fall back into patterns. You will rise some mornings without attention. But if you've built the rhythm, you'll hear it calling you back. Even in chaos, even in exhaustion, even in doubt. That rhythm will remain like a bell ringing inside you, softly, faithfully, patiently. And when you hear it stop, breathe, listen, return. That is how the mind resets, not through effort, through rhythm, through returning gently again. There is a difference between starting your day and arriving in it. Most people start. They wake up, stand up, and go. The body moves forward, but the awareness is still catching up. So they spend their hours chasing alignment without realizing it was always found at the beginning, not in tasks, but in attention. When you arrive in your day with presence, you don't need to force clarity. You carry it, and that clarity becomes your compass. It doesn't make life easier, but it makes your path true. Even in difficulty, you walk from center. Even in uncertainty, you respond from rhythm. This is the quiet gift of practice. It does not promise perfection, it creates orientation. So you no longer ask, am I doing this right? Instead you ask, am I doing this with presence? And if the answer is yes, then whatever unfolds becomes part of the path. Even fatigue, even distraction, even pain. Because those too are invitations to return. You stretch not to perfect the body, but to listen to it. You sit not to silence the thoughts, but to soften your grip on them. You rise not to prove your worth, but to move from stillness with awareness in your spine and breath in your bones. This is how the monk moves through the world, not above it, not apart from it, but within it, deeply within it, walking slowly through the noise as if nothing is more important than the step itself. And truly, nothing is. Because each step is not just a movement, it is a reflection of your state. So, walk like the ground beneath your feet is sacred, because it is. Not because someone said so, but because it's this moment. And this moment is always sacred when you enter it fully. That is the gift of morning presence. It teaches you how to enter each moment that follows. Not rushed, not distracted, but alert, attentive, still. Stillness is not the absence of motion. It is the presence of depth. Stillness is what allows the stream to reflect the sky. Stillness is what allows the breath to become steady. Stillness is what allows the self to be seen not as an idea, but as experience. And stillness cannot be faked. It cannot be downloaded or borrowed. It must be practiced. Quietly, reverently, repeatedly. That is why monks bow to the floor, why they sweep the same courtyard each day, why they walk with hands folded and eyes lowered, not because they reject the world, but because they've learned to meet it with full attention. Can you do the same? Not just in meditation, but in motion, in the way you hold a glass of water, in the way you place your phone down, in the way you breathe before answering, in the way you feel your feet as you walk into your next task. This is not slowness for its own sake. It is precision, it is awareness, it is respect. Because how you meet one moment is how you train your nervous system to meet all of them. So start with one. Start with this one. Feel the breath not as an idea, but as a physical current. Feel the ground not as a surface, but as your constant partner. Feel your spine not as posture, but as your center line of awareness. And move from there. Move slowly, not to delay life, but to be inside it. Because you cannot reset the mind if you are not fully in the body. And you cannot fully enter the body if you treat it like a tool. It is not a tool, it is a temple. Not in metaphor, in reality. It is where your awareness lives. It is where stillness begins. It is where discipline becomes embodied, not as pressure, but as devotion. You brush the teeth not to get it over with, but to care for the vessel. You fold the clothes not to finish a task, but to honor the life that wears them. You eat slowly, not as a tactic, but as a ritual of gratitude. Because repetition with awareness becomes reverence, and reverence brings order, and order brings clarity, and clarity is the doorway to inner peace. So many are seeking peace in ideas, but peace is not intellectual. It is physical. It is relational. It is built in the way your nervous system learns to trust your presence. And trust is earned by practice, by how gently you speak to yourself in the morning, by how patiently you return to the breath when your thoughts scatter, by how consistently you give yourself space without punishment, without judgment, without the need to be anyone else. That is the real reset, not erasing who you were, but choosing who you return to over and over. And the one you return to is already whole, already worthy, already here, underneath the noise, beneath the tension, beyond the doubt. You do not need to become that self, you only need to remember. And remembering takes rhythm, so build that rhythm quietly. Let it live in your feet. Let it breathe through your chest. Let it soften your voice. Let it hold your gaze steady when the world is spinning. Because the world will spin, and you will forget, and you will fall back into habit. But the rhythm you built will remain waiting, like a path through the forest that no one else can see, but that your body remembers. So each morning is not about being better, it is about being back. Back in the breath, back in the body, back in the moment, back in the rhythm you never really lost, only stepped away from, and now you've returned. There is no final state, there is only this moment and how you meet it. Not once, but endlessly. The mind will ask for a destination. The ego will crave a finish line, but presence has no finish. It breathes, it opens, it waits. And each morning you rise, it asks the same quiet question. Will you return? Will you return to the breath, not as a technique, but as a truth? Will you return to the body, not to sculpt it, but to inhabit it? Will you return to the rhythm, not to control it, but to follow it? Because the real reset isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't feel like a surge. It feels like a remembering, like something inside you exhaling, like a tree settling after wind, like water coming still after the stone has fallen. And in that stillness you begin to hear, not words, not thoughts, but knowing. A knowing that isn't explained, it's lived. It doesn't demand proof, it offers peace. It doesn't push, it holds. So let yourself be held just for a moment, by the breath, by the rhythm, by the gentle truth that nothing more is needed right now. You don't need to be more productive to be worthy of presence. You don't need to be healed to be here. You don't need to have clarity to be calm. You only need to let go of what is not this. Let go of the mental sprint. Let go of the unspoken tension. Let go of the tight grip on what comes next. And feel what remains. That is the reset. Not of the world, but of how you touch the world. Not of the schedule, but of how you enter the schedule. Not of your identity, but of your intimacy with what is real. And what is real is always now. Not your plan, not your title, not your performance. Just this. Just this moment of breath moving through body. Just this quiet noticing of where you are. Just this sacred invitation to be in rhythm with life instead of resisting it. Because the resistance is exhausting, and you've tried that path already. You've lived the morning that begins in rush. You've felt the day that starts in fight. You've heard the voice that says you're already behind. So try a different voice. Let this one speak now. You are not late. You are here. You are whole. You are already within the practice. Let that voice guide you. Let it rise from breath. Let it soften your thoughts. Let it place your feet back on the path that never left. This is not the end. It is the gentle beginning again. The breath again. The presence again. The return again. Because life does not require that you conquer it. It only asks that you show up awake. That you open your eyes and see what has always been here. Stillness, rhythm, silence, being. So when you rise from this practice, do not rise to perform. Do not rise to chase. Rise with the knowing that you've already arrived. And from that knowing, act. From that knowing, speak. From that knowing, walk the day as if your very breath is a sacred offering to the world around you. Because it is. And when you forget, return. When you rush, pause. When you harden, breathe. Not to fix, not to escape, but to remember you never needed to escape. You only needed to stop running. This is your ground. This is your pace. This is your morning. It begins not when the world demands you move, but when you decide to be still first. Still and then move. Still and then speak. Still and then live. Let this be your way. Not once, every morning.